All right, Matt. That red light came on. Are you okay? You feeling all right? You nervous at all? No, you're okay.
No, good.
I'm
Should
good.
I
All
be
right.
nervous?
Just a little bit of nervousness in there. I can sense it. I'm kidding.
All
I'm
right,
kidding. Hey,
all
Matt,
good.
why don't you do my listeners a favor? Kind of introduce yourself and tell them what you're working on right now.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I'm glad to be here. My name is Mat Jacobson. I'm the founder and president of Ducere Global Business School. I'm typically based out of Los Angeles, where it's a little bit sunnier than where I am today, but for the next week, I'm in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about like what is this company? Like, what are you guys working on right now?
So we're effectively a global university group, and our whole mission and purpose is to really shake up the industry, revolutionize the industry of higher education, and provide much more accessibility. So, I'll try to keep it really brief because I can talk about this stuff for hours, but I think everyone has a common sense, intuitive sense that education is too expensive.
Hmm.
There's a lot of barriers, and pretty much what people are learning is disconnected and irrelevant to their career or their job. So there's really, really fundamental problems. We're at events all over the world. Last week I was at the World Bank Conference on Higher Education, and this is just constantly talked about that, universities are failing students, they're not providing graduate outcomes, they're not providing career relevant skills, but then everyone's still talking about the same thing for decades. And it's like,
Yeah.
where's the solution? Like, what are we actually doing to fix the problem? Who cares about talking about the problems? How are we actually solving the problems? And that's what we're passionate about, building the world's most industry focused, career relevant university programs.
Hmm. Man, this sounds like a massive, massive undertaking. So, kind of, what's the background and inspiration that's led you from what you just said and how big this mountain is to climb to right now?
So, yeah, that's really interesting in terms of how big the challenge is and how hard it is to overcome, but how I got to this point. So, just from a personal perspective, you can probably tell from my accent, Jeff, I'm not a local
Yeah.
originally. So, I'm from Australia, grew up in Australia, went to university, went to one of the top 100 ranked universities in the world.
Mhm.
I also did a law degree, graduated with honors. Awesome, right? I'm a legend
Yeah.
in academia, going to high school, going to university, graduating with honors. Fantastic. I'm set up for success. Then what I realized when I went to my first day on the job is actually I didn't know anything about anything.
Mm.
And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I've spent all this time, I've been sitting exams, I've been writing papers, I graduate with honors, thinking I'm going to kill it in my career. Like, I'm just ready to go. And it's like, I don't even know how to make a coffee for like a client. I don't know how to do a single thing in a real world office environment. And I thought, wow, that's really demotivating, and you don't have a lot of confidence. And is it just me? But then as you speak to friends who are doing all sorts of jobs in engineering and accounting, they all say the same thing. They're like, yeah, you go to university and sit in classes just to get your degree so you can get a job, but you actually don't learn anything useful, and you have to get your real skills learning on the job. You've got to kind of start over again. So that was my own personal experience. And this is just the system that people put up with. But I'm like, that's ridiculous. You're spending so much time and so much money and so much effort. Like, at least have something that's in some way useful and practical. And then, as far as how hard it is to overcome this challenge, it's really not that complicated, honestly. So, the sorts of things that are talked about is that university degrees take too long, they're too expensive, and they're not practical and relevant enough. So, wow, what an incredible like revelation. Why don't we make degrees more accessible, more
Yeah.
affordable, and more relevant? It's really not that complicated. It's just having the will to design curriculum in a more practical and a more current way. But the status quo of kind of fat cat, lazy, institutional universities that have been around for 100 years or more is we've got students coming in, we're getting the revenue, we're getting the fees. Like, why bother changing? Um,
Right.
so there's that inertia element, but we think that there's a fundamental need to significantly change the model, which is what we've done and proven all over the world.
Yeah, that's why I was very excited for this call because I have dipped my toes into education at the university level in the finance crowdfunding space, and I always have come in there guns a blazing of what we can do, and I've ran into nothing but roadblocks of like, yeah, so we are a battleship. It's going to take us about 4 years to get an approval for that curriculum that you think that you want to do or that partnership that you want to bring in. So, and I'll be like, you mean when the whole world has changed and we're a completely, whatever I'm doing now is completely different. And the second thing that I was excited about is I actually don't think I know anybody in my sphere of influence, my best friends or my friends around me, that have a degree in anything that they're actually working on. Like my
Yep.
wife has my wife has a degree in social work, and she's a project manager at a digital marketing agency. Like what?
Yeah.
And it never did really anything in social work. Just like it wasn't like, oh, she just fell into this. So like, so I guess let's kind of dive in a little bit more into like maybe like educational philosophy. So as you're trying to kind of align everything you're just talking about, what does that really truly mean to say degree to job? Like how do you align that type of philosophy?
Yeah. So I'll just start off very quickly with some of the just entry barriers, because before you even get into what am I learning in the class, how do you even get into the class? So the average degree cost in the US average is $120,000. That's insane. It's like 10 times the international average. So people might be thinking in the US, you're based in Detroit. People might be thinking, well, that's just how university is. It's not how university is. There is nowhere else in the world, on the planet, that charges anywhere remotely close to that amount of money. So the first thing is, why are US students being so disadvantaged and having such a huge price tag on something that doesn't cost that much? Every other university in the world, from Scotland to France to Australia to New Zealand, can figure out how to do degrees more affordably. We have full university degrees starting from like $8,000, $9,000, going up to about $15,000 for like executive MBAs accredited by world-class public institutions. So affordability, number one. Second is they call it a 4-year college degree in the US. Just the name is misleading. The average time it takes to finish a degree is 5.5 years. So
Yep.
it's way too long. Internationally, the average degree takes 3 years. At a master's level, the US will not allow you to enroll in a degree unless in a master's, say an MBA, unless you have a bachelor's degree. There's restrictions everywhere. So Bill Gates, who would get invited to speak at Yale or Harvard or Columbia as this global expert in business, would be denied if he applied to any college in the US to do an MBA. Whereas a
Wow.
22-year-old who's finished their liberal arts degree supposedly is ready for an MBA. So we allow students to enter based on their professional experience. We have it affordable. So there's a lot of accessible ways to get in, and it's an affordable price. You're talking about something that anyone could afford on minimum wage, in a part-time job, because you can get a Sallie Mae loan paying for a $10,000 degree. You're paying $50 a week. You could be working part-time and doing that. So the first thing I just wanted to mention, Jeff, is you got to get in first before you can worry
Yeah.
about what am I learning. And there's so many obstacles and barriers, and we're breaking down all those barriers. After that, now we've got in. So what are we actually learning? And you mentioned about your wife studying one kind of area, but then working in a different area. That's extremely common. That happens all the time. But
Yeah.
even if you are studying an area that you're interested in and you're going to work in, typically the content is so old and so irrelevant and run by academics that have never even worked in a job. So you talk about marketing strategy, working in a bank or something. And it's like,
Right.
I'm learning from a professor teaching me marketing strategy, and they've never actually worked in marketing in a company before. So it's
Yeah.
all textbook and theoretical. We have no exams. You're learning from world leaders, hundreds of world leaders, billionaires, entrepreneurs, founders, heads of the CIA, heads of the UN, presidents of countries, prime ministers, Nobel Prize winners, Nobel Peace Prize winners. We have hundreds of world leaders that we've built our curriculum with. So you're learning from the world's best. These are all full university degrees, but you're still learning from the most practical, applied people in the world. And then you not only are learning from the most practical people in the world, but you're also doing your assignments that are tailored to your industry. So if you work in a fintech company, or you work in a bank, or you work in an airline, if you went to any university in the world, all of those people would be told, you're going to write a case study this weekend on US Post, and something they did 10 years ago, which is not relevant
Right.
to any of them. Whereas here, if you work in an airline, you're doing your project on a strategic project of that airline. If you work in a bank, you're doing a strategic project, a current strategic project for your MBA on that bank. So it's completely integrated into the work environment to solving strategic challenges, which is the best way to get career progression, because you're visible to your employers, you're solving important challenges, and your MBA is practical and useful, as opposed to I'm going off and studying classes somewhere, and no one in your company really even knows what you're doing, to be honest.
Yeah. You're mentioning, that these challenges and how we're overcoming them. How are you building this team of, I guess, professors? I don't, they refer to as professors in your world, I'm assuming. How are you putting this team together to be this focused, so that you're not doing what you just mentioned? How are you putting them together?
Perfect question. So it's about firstly starting with what are the business needs and challenges. That means speaking to and liaising greatly with industry. We have collaborations and projects and strategic initiatives with PwC, KPMG, Aston Martin, LinkedIn, Disney, airlines, banks. So first start from the end goal, right? What does industry want? Not start from academia designing some module learning outcome and then hoping 10 years later it's going to be relevant to industry. So start with industry
Right.
first. Then we build our curriculum with all of these real world leaders. That's really critical. And of course, we have professors, PhDs, MBAs that are academics that are lecturing and grading papers. But even them that have to, by the regulations, have the necessary academic background and requirements, we still have what we call pracademics, which means
Mm,
they're not career academics that have never left a university campus. They've done consulting, they've worked in business, and they've done lecturing, and they've worked in academia. We always have people that have that combination of, oh, I know the real world, I work in the real world, I've done industry work, and having that combination is critical. So at every level, the goal is career progression. And I don't know how philosophical we want to get, Jeff, but
yeah.
one of the things that's talked about a lot is what is the goal and purpose? What is the value, mission, purpose in the first place? You might
Right.
think walking around a university campus at a university is there for student outcomes. They're actually not. A university's primary goal is research, publishing, and academic rankings. That's what
Mm,
drives promotions within a university. That's what drives the prestige of a university. It has nothing to do with students and student outcomes. It's about
yeah.
research publishing. Teaching students is almost like a byproduct. So, hey, Professor X, you want to be here doing great research, you have to teach two classes. Like, okay, rolling my eyes. I'll kind of do the minimum I need to do just to tick off that I'm teaching my two classes. We only care about career progression of students. That is our
Mm,
entire focus. So it's a completely different mindset in the way we think about design and deliver education.
yeah. I have to imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of hearing you speak about that as you're working with some of these companies, let's take Disney as an example. I got to imagine that you're hearing even some of their pain points of we are not filling the bucket with talent that does the thing that we do, right? So the more that is a straight line, I would imagine that they're looking at like, well, we asked for this type of person to learn these skill sets. These skill sets were actually trained. It makes our life easier as opposed to somebody coming in for your degree from whatever and whatever, and then now being like, you got to learn all of this, right? So I got to imagine that all of these companies are thinking that way a little bit.
100%. So there's multiple challenges on the enterprise side. So you take a Fortune 500 company. Firstly, they don't really want the graduate students coming in because they're like these students are kind of useless. Just like I was coming in straight out of law school, I was kind of useless to an employer. I had to really spend a year kind of just learning the basics so I could start adding value. Probably took a good year to really not be a trainee, but be an actual value add to the organization. So companies don't really see much value in graduates. In the staff that are there and supporting staff through education and say higher education, most big companies have a tuition support program to help their staff get a degree and then be able to progress. The challenge there is you're sending people off to a local university taking that philosophy class, that algebra class, that French literature class,
Mhm.
and it's completely irrelevant. What that means in practice is technically these companies have a tuition reimbursement policy, but it's really treated as a benefit, something that we should do to offer to our staff. But it's
Mm,
so low in the priority and the promotion that typically about 1% of staff, 1% actually take advantage of a tuition reimbursement program because it's just seen as so kind of
yeah.
useless and irrelevant to the company. So when you talk to a company and say, hey, why don't you actually support your staff to do a degree that's going to actually be tailored to the strategy, direction, values of your business, and they're going to get a degree. So the staff are motivated. They're going to have that credential, which leads to career progression opportunities, but they're also solving really important challenges within your business along the way. It's a win for the company and a win for the employee. We strongly believe that companies should address education through self interest. What's in it for me
Mm,
as a company? What's my ROI? How am I benefiting? That's actually great, ironically, for the staff. Because if there's nothing in it for the company, they're not really going to support it. They're not going to be motivated to drive that access to degrees. But if it's aligned, if it's a win win, and the company's like, wow, for every student we support $10,000 to a degree, we're getting $100,000 in ROI outcome through retention, saving money on turnover and recruitment, solving strategic challenges of the company, then it's like, why would we not want to get every one of our managers to do a tailored enterprise MBA? So what's good for the company is actually good for the employee. You've got to have that alignment rather than us
yeah.
versus them style
Yep.
mentality.
Totally makes sense. How does it work in terms of like the accreditation process? I guess in this type of program, which is more of a global. Correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like a global vision as opposed to University of Michigan State is great at agriculture, right? Like you know what I
Right.
mean. So it's very bit more focused. So how are you guys approaching the accreditation portion
Yeah.
of this equation?
So we design the entire degrees. It's on our platform. We have all these global leaders. We hire all the academics. We deliver the programs. However, we then partner with accredited, registered, government licensed universities all over the world. So we have a university partner in Mexico. We have a university partner in the US, Kennedy University. In Mexico, it's the largest, most prestigious university group, the Tech Group, Tech University Group. We have university partners in Australia. We have university partners in the UK, big public universities like University of East London. We have partners in France, Italy, Spain, Africa, and they are essentially accrediting. They're issuing the piece of paper. It's our degree that we deliver, but you actually get your formal degree from Kennedy University or University of East London or Torrens University Australia or University of Valencia. Why that's important is firstly, you've got a lot of options. All these different government registered university regulations have different entry criteria, different price points. And now we have a whole lot of options for people. If someone wants an MBA, what's your driving motivation? Do you want it just because you need it to tick off in order to get a promotion? Is it because you really want strategic leadership development and understanding? Is it because you want it on your resume? Are you cost conscious? You're looking for the lowest price option? Are you more brand conscious? So these are all the sorts of things that we can deliver with university registered programs all over the world.
Yeah.
And as well as that, because we have registered programs in countries around the world, what that also means is that we can actually have funding options and loan options from around the world.
Mm,
So in the US, you can get a Sallie Mae loan. In the UK, you can get a UK government loan. In Australia, you can get an Australian government student loan. If you were just located in one location, so say the UK, yeah, the UK citizens can get a UK government loan, but no one else can get a loan to do a UK degree. When you have your registrations all over the world, you're not only we're affordable, even $8,000-10,000 honestly is a challenge for some people. But if you can get a
yeah.
easily repayable student loan at a really low tuition, you're just starting to get into the realm of like, as I say, $50 a week, and you're paying for a
Mhm.
university degree and not having a $500,000 student debt that you're going to have for the next 20 years.
Yeah, that student debt thing, that was my Achilles heel. When I looked at it, well, I guess this was 98, 99 when I got out of high school, and my parents were like, "You have to go," and I was like, "I am not that guy." I did, so I did. I opened up a recording studio and just started to bang my head against the wall and figure it out and figure out life's lessons. And I just, I am so thankful I did that because again, my peers are all sitting with $100,000 debt, on these degrees that, again, not even working in the things. That equation never lined up in my brain, but it's crazy how many people don't see it. They just,
Yeah,
that
so
debt.
I
Ugh.
totally agree. I totally agree, Jeff. So, an example I can give is, I come from Melbourne, Australia. before I moved to the US, and we're a coffee snob culture. We love coffee. We're regarded as one of the best coffee cultures in the world. So I like drinking a cup of coffee. I'll get a cup of coffee in the morning. How much does a cup of coffee cost? I don't know, $4, $5. So I'm happy to drink it. Now, what if that cup of coffee cost $120 or $150? Now, I still like coffee, but at some
Yeah.
point I'm thinking, geez, $150 for a coffee. Do I really want to spend that? So the question is not, is there just inherent value in something? It's at what point is there a price value where it's over the point of being reasonable? So we have so many people like you, Jeff, who just said, I'm not willing to spend $150,000, $200,000 on a degree. But when we explain to people, well, you know what? Some people are running their own business or in senior management and they think, you know what, I've got to a certain level, but if I had that underpinning strategic knowledge of an MBA, I could probably go even further. And it's
Yep.
$10,000, $10,000 for an accredited MBA. You don't need a prior bachelor's degree. So you can do a 12-month flexible online MBA. People are like, oh my God, I never even
Hmm.
thought that was an option. And at $10,000, the ROI is absolutely there because the average additional earnings of a master's is $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. So
Yep.
if you can do an MBA for $10,000, absolutely we would stand behind that being a good investment. Is it worth going and spending $150,000 on an MBA? Wow, you're taking 2 years out of work typically for a traditional
Yeah.
MBA. So you're losing a couple of $100,000 in income. You're spending two
Yep.
years of your life. You're spending $150,000. You're so far behind that it's just going to take you years and years before you break even. So we believe that it's got to be that real driving financial ROI.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. I think something you were mentioning earlier too, and it seems like that partnership that you have with the accredited universities is huge. One of the things that I dealt with is I was a part of a program that was in the music business, and they were sort of offering certificates, and students were going out and getting these huge loans through the Sally Mays of the world, and then getting a certificate in guitar playing. And I'd just be like, what on earth are these guys doing? Right? Like, this is there's nothing to hang your hat on here. There's no real meat on this bone, basically. Right. And I was just watching student after student go into this, and I'm like, what, a degree, a certificate in songwriting from this small, institution. It was just like, this is, man. And I know that that's just one, that's my example of it. I'm sure there's a million of these types of, whatever they
Absolutely.
are. I don't even know what they are. There's just these pop-up educational things. So I
Latin
really see.
dance classes, basket
Yeah,
weaving,
right, right,
whatever.
right.
Like there's
Yeah,
so many
and you can
just
still,
useless, irrelevant
and you can still go get a
subjects.
loan. You can get a loan for it. Like, you can take out, what? Just go dance. Just record. Just write a song. So what you're describing actually has meat on it, right? Like, you're walking away with that actual degree that does move you from A to B to C in your career. So, man,
Correct. We
it's
have no general ed, and I'm not against general ed, by the way. I studied philosophy classes when I went to university, but I chose to do that. It was my decision. I thought, that's kind of interesting. I want to take a couple of philosophy classes, and I did philosophy classes. But in the US, it's mandated and required. So
yep,
they have now in the US this demographic, which is a pretty shocking statistic. There's a demographic called some college, no degree. So people like your parents telling their kids, you should go to college. It's a good thing to do. It's like going to set you up for success, etc. And then they think, okay, well, I'm going to start that process. So they go to college and then they drop out. So it's some college and no degree. So that's the worst of all situations because now you've got this big college debt. You didn't even graduate. You have nothing to show for it.
yep,
That's 37 million people. And I come from a country where that's so ironic because that's more than the population of the country I come from. And that's people who didn't complete their university college program because it took too long. They're being forced to do all these classes why do I have to do a second, third French language class? I don't care. I'm not in France. Like, I just want to get like a banking job. So,
right.
it's these barriers that are preventing people, and we focus purely on what someone wants to do. So if someone wants to do digital marketing and they want to do a degree with us, guess what they're going to study? You won't believe it. The most bizarre thing ever. They're going to study digital marketing. That's it. They're going to do an
Right.
entire degree focusing on everything you need to know to be an expert in digital marketing. And there's no French class, there's no music class, there's no
Right. Right.
like
Yep.
just do what you need for the career. Now, as I said, We have nothing against philosophy. We've got nothing against music. If you want to
Hmm.
do that, go pay for it and elect to do that. But don't
Yeah,
force people to take classes that they don't want and force them to pay for it.
yeah, yeah. How much has the impact of technology helped grow your company, or did COVID have a positive impact? Maybe where like we
I think we
all
may have
now
lost the
somewhat
connection. I
accepted.
don't know if you can still hear me, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. I hear you good. I don't know. You got me on my end. Oh, you there? Yeah, I think maybe our connection's a little spotty right now. We'll give it a minute. We'll edit this out. Yeah, there you go. Am I still here? Checkity check 1 2.
Uh,
Check 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 check.
can can you hear me now?
Oh, do we lose you?
Um,
Oh, yeah, you might be back. Can
I,
you hear me all right?
I
Check
I
one
can hear
two.
you now. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, I think we're good. There we go. We just needed to
Uh,
resync the world.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi here, but I think it's working now.
Yeah, I
So
think we're all right.
hopefully,
Yeah, we'll just
okay.
just
Sorry
do a
about
quick little edit. Good thing I know how to edit audio and video.
that.
You
Yeah,
just slice it together, a
perfect,
little crossfade, and you're good to go here. I don't know if you heard that
excellent.
last question. I was wondering just about like the impact of technology, even what we're doing right now, how maybe COVID played into this in terms of just the kind of the structure of business of just kind of everybody kind of learns this way now, right? We're all learning kind of online and stuff. So how did that kind of impact the technology in your business?
So I don't think that there was a huge impact due to COVID, honestly, because if you look at the trend of online learning, for the last 10, 15 years, online education has been growing steadily, while pure campus based degrees have been
Mm,
declining steadily. So that's a much longer arc around online education. Now, there is absolutely a place for, oh my God, what's going on here? Sorry,
uh,
Jeff, can you still hear me?
yeah, 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 yeah. You just broke up for a second there.
Um, I don't know what's happening here, but the internet seems to drop out. I'm gonna try and I'm just gonna try and move somewhere else for a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely.
Or let's see if it works. It seems to be connected now.
Yeah,
Um, I'll see if that works. Okay, sorry. So the question you asked was around the impact of COVID on online and flexibility.
yeah.
So in reality, COVID didn't have a huge impact in the sense that for the last 10 to 15 years, the take up of online education has been steadily increasing, while purely campus based programs has been steadily decreasing.
Mm,
Campus programs are actually fantastic for a very specific demographic, and that is your traditional high school leaver going into college. They want to get away from home. They want to join a sports team. They want to socialize. They want to make friends. There's a lot of reasons to go to a college outside of purely what am I learning to get a job.
yeah.
We don't really focus on that demographic. Our demographic are already full time working professionals. They could be young, they could be 22, 23, working as a teller in a bank or working at Starbucks. But that person is thinking, you know what, I never went to college. Maybe I didn't even finish high school. And I've been working now for 2, 3 years in Starbucks and I'm kind of not really going anywhere. I want to be the
Hmm.
store manager of this Starbucks. And if I get a bachelor's degree, I'm probably in a much better position. So they want to keep working in their job. The teller wants to keep working at Wells Fargo. They don't want to leave their job and go to school full time. So even at that bachelor's degree level, or say someone is a supervisor now at the bank because they've been there 7, 8 years, they never even got their bachelor's, and they're like, I'm probably maxed out in terms of I've hit a ceiling of where I can go. I don't even have a bachelor's. They don't really want to necessarily go back there now as supervisor to do a full bachelor's degree. It's going to take them 5, 6 years. We can put them straight into an MBA program. And in 12 months, they're an MBA graduate, and that can help them really get to that next level of the organization. So online is really good for that working professional, that at home mum, got a couple
Yep.
of kids, taking a few years off, but is thinking in 12 months, I want to get back into the workforce. My kids are going to be in preschool or kindergarten. That's where you want that flexibility. And the online is so practical, but not necessarily for the high school leaver who's got some other, goals and more maybe broader life priorities than just thinking about career.
Yeah, you're preaching to me on that. I got a really good friend, and she's a mom of two, and she wants to grow that career, and she's trying to look at schools, and they're making her go to drive 40 minutes to this campus, park, get there, babysitters. I mean, you're just talking books. It's like, what year? I mean, what year are we talking about right now? As she's describing some of the stuff, I'm like, good luck.
And you know what happens?
You'll
You know what happens, Jeff? It's just interesting. Even campus is often not truly campus. So people think it is. And so that example you give, so she drives for 40 minutes, parks a car, has to find a
Yep,
parking spot. That's enough of a challenge. Then walk to the lecture hall, takes 15 minutes to walk to your lecture. And then what are you doing? You're literally sitting there passively in a lecture, just being lectured at by someone in the front. It's not an engaging, interactive, hands on experience where you're doing something. You're just sitting there listening. And then those lectures are typically recorded. So even if you're in a campus, the university says, look, if you can't attend the lecture live, you can actually just watch it live. And then
sure.
after someone drives 5, 6, 7, 8 times, they're thinking, so I can just sit at home in my pajamas and log in and watch the same thing as sitting in a chair. So they're technically a campus student. And then they're like
Yeah,
70, 80% of their time, they're actually not even attending and they're just accessing it live. So again, if their purpose is education and their purpose is to get a degree, really it's a waste of time. If that person is going there because no, I socialize, I'm joining some student clubs, I'm doing other things,
yeah,
fantastic. If you're just turning up and driving to attend a lecture and drive back home, absolutely
yeah.
impractical.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see these two Venn diagrams of who we're talking about, because then my other buddy, his son's 18, went to U of M, and it's all about the football games. It's about the
Exactly.
frat party. It's in the education. Yeah, it's in there, but it's definitely all about, like, growing up and just having those experiences, which again, totally great. I mean, have those experiences, have those parties, and go to football games. But for somebody that's 27, 28, 30, they're just a different stage of life.
Correct.
And
They're not planning to join a fraternity and go out drinking beers all night.
yeah,
Like that's not really the objective when you're 27.
yeah,
Thinking about how is this degree going to help me, and a little bit maybe more conscious of how much am I paying, and is that really a good investment?
yeah,
So it's absolutely a different demographic. We are unashamedly focused on students who purely are just thinking about career progression. So if people want those other things, and don't get us wrong, you're still networking. You're in a global alumni. You're doing discussion forums and live lectures, but rather than being on one campus in say Michigan, you're in a cohort with students in London, Sydney, New York,
yeah,
South Africa, and you build really close bonds. And you go to campus. There is a physical connection, and the only physical connection is you actually go and graduate on campus, cap and gown. So you
mhm,
meet all your friends that you've been working with and the professors you've been learning from for the last year, but you graduate in Miami or in Sydney or in London or in Rome or in Paris. So you've got that great personal connection that way to the campus and the institution. But throughout the studies, you're just focused on the studies and building those relationships and network. But they're quite honestly more professional networks than joining a sports team.
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's flip a little bit over. So currently, you guys are fundraising right now. Let's talk a little bit about kind of where the company is structurally right now, why fundraising is a part of it, and just what kind of some of those goals are.
Perfect. Great question. So everything we've done to date, so just to give a little bit of stats on where we are. So we have operations in 5 continents, staff and operations in 5 continents. We have university partners all over the world, which I mentioned. We've enrolled over 2,000 degree students to date, and we're just starting. We believe we're just starting. We've done 28.5 million USD in degree revenue to date. And
Mm,
all of that has been through bootstrapping, smell of an oily rag,
yeah,
organic growth, just figure it out and make it happen. And we really wanted to prove the model and get a certain level of credibility and distribution in the market. We have won awards and been recognized all over the world. I think 2 weeks ago, we just got recognized for 2 awards in California alone. We've won awards and been recognized by US Congress, by state of California, by UK higher education awards, by Australian higher education awards in Africa. So we've really come a long way just off our own steam and organic growth.
mm,
But we want to get to a point where we could have 5,000 students a year, 10,000 students a year. If we can get to 5,500 students at our average tuition price, 5,500 students a year at our average tuition price, that's our kind of next medium term
Yeah.
goal. That's $100 million revenue. That should
Wow.
take us to around a $500 million valuation. A 5x multiple is pretty reasonable on a high growth ed tech company. A 5x multiple on revenue. That's where we want to get to, a $500 million valuation. This is our first ever fundraise. We have never gone out and actually raised money and taken investment dollars. And we wanted to do it in a very formal, transparent way. So we're not just doing a private raise, we're doing
Yep.
an SEC registered public fundraise, public equity fundraise. It's only a very small fundraise because, as sure as you know and your listeners know, when you go through a crowd equity public fundraise, you do it in stages. The
Mhm.
first raise is the SE, so CF regulation through Start Engine through SE, and that's a $1.3 million cap. Even if we had $10 million of interested investors, it's capped at $1.3 million, and we have to stop. The idea
Yep.
is that we have at the lowest, ground floor opportunity to invest $1.3 million, but that gives people an entry. It gives people the first right for all future raises. It gives people scholarship rates for any of our degrees. So there's a lot of benefits. And our goal is next year to move up to the next level and do a $5 million raise at a significantly higher valuation. Now, of course, you can never promise any of this stuff, can't guarantee it. Just like investing in, Bank of America or Facebook, they can talk about their vision and strategy and roadmap, and that could be really exciting and have great growth opportunity. But of course, any investment, there's no guarantee, but
Sure.
that's our plan and roadmap. What we want to do with that money fundamentally, primarily, is purely growth. So we've invested millions of dollars in our platform, our global leaders, our curriculum on all these courses on an MBA in AI and the world's first MBA in space leadership and all this really cool stuff. We've done that. We've made that investment. Now we are bringing in outside investors who believe in our vision of helping the world get access to degrees, and our focus with the investment is purely marketing growth. So to expand into markets like China, India, Canada,
Mm.
UAE, big marketplaces where we don't really have any presence at the moment, and really increase, as well as marketing increase in the markets we're already in, and generating new markets so we can really accelerate our growth. So the primary focus of investment is to accelerate the growth. So something that might take us 5 years if we organically grow, or 10 years if we organically grow, we could get there in 3 years instead of 10 years by accelerating that
Yeah.
trajectory.
Yeah. That's cool. What's the thing that's kind of keeping you up at night right now? What's the man? I got it. This needs to happen for us right now.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we're thinking about, of course, is where we place our big bets. Higher
Mm.
education is a really, really interesting marketplace. We had one investor who's a very successful entrepreneur, built a big media company, sold it to one of the biggest media companies without naming names, but one of the biggest media companies in the US. And when we, explain what we do, his kind of response was, "I love killing dinosaurs." Because these old industries, these old traditional bureaucratic industries, are ripe for, for really being disrupted. So education is interesting because it's one of the biggest segments of a country's GDP. You think about health, education, defense. It's in there as one of the
Yeah.
biggest parts of a country's economy, but it's so old and so traditional and so set in its ways, that it's kind of really like the perfect storm for like an Uber style changing of the whole system. And so we're still small and we see so many opportunities. And the thing that, keeps us up, not necessarily from a anxiety perspective, but more maybe from an opportunity, but making the right decision, because that is a little bit anxiety
Yeah.
provoking. You don't want to make the wrong bet. And that is, where do we really see the best opportunity, the best niches, the best
Mm.
competitive advantage? Higher education is huge and ripe for change, but there's also a lot of universities. So it's highly competitive, and we don't want to compete head on with all those traditional universities. We're finding, avenues where the universities are not serving populations well, and it's like, well, we can serve that population really well. And that's the big strategic focus for us.
Right. Right. Do you uh, uh, do you guys envision being able to take on everything or having a little bit more focus? I mean, you kind of just alluded to that, but just trying to think like higher education. Well, that could be everything from chef cooking, recording studios. I mean, there's the thing, business degrees, MBA. I mean, it just could be almost everything. And is that mountain too big as opposed to being like, you know what, we really do have our focus. You mentioned the space. I think you've got a new AI one that I saw a couple updates on that. So is it being a little bit more strategic? Is that what you're kind of discussing? That sort of strategic verticals industry as opposed to being like everything for everybody, which
Absolutely.
nothing
Absolutely.
at the
That's
end of the
such a
day. Like,
Yes, that's such a great question, Jeff. So one of the problems we see with universities is all universities are generalists. They're a jack of all trades. They do every single qualification from, hospitality management to engineering to, whatever,
yeah,
psychology, health services, and you don't really specialize in anything. This is quite rare, right? So if you're an amazing hotel operator and you're the Marriott, hotels, you don't also have a car company and you're in the automotive industry, and you don't
right.
also have like a shipping company. These are
Yeah,
all, and have an oil refinery on the side. It's like you kind of don't really have a specialization in anything.
yeah,
Bank of America wants to be the biggest bank in the world and be the best at banking. They don't also want to start running restaurants. So
right,
why are universities being these jack of all trades doing everything? So we are a business school. We do bachelors and MBAs in things that you would imagine are in a business school. So even when we talk about AI, we're not doing technical coding programs of AI. We're doing MBAs in AI strategy, business applications, opportunity, risk. So it's your average manager. It's not a techie IT person who's coding doing our course. It's a manager at a tech company who's thinking, what can we do with AI? You could be yourself thinking, how can I use AI to reach more investors, to provide faster response times, to target specific investment opportunities to the right profile investor that AI could use? That's how you use AI, but also understanding the risks and managing the risks, of which there are significant risks and biases in AI and a lot of problems in AI. So if you're a law firm, if you're an accounting firm, you have to be thinking about, well, wow, we could use AI to streamline a lot of our administrative processes and reduce costs. Great. But when something's out there in AI and you're talking about client data and sensitive information, is it protected? Or maybe the AI is going to use it for other things because it keeps learning and reusing stuff. So these are the sorts of questions and the way we would apply a program in space. Huge sector. We're doing the first MBA in space leadership. It's about the space economy. It's not about, how to build, jet propulsion systems for rockets.
right.
So you're a great question. We branch out into lots of areas within the context of strategic business and leadership. So Ducere, because we get asked a lot, how do you pronounce it? Like, firstly, when they see the name. The second thing is, what the hell is Ducere? And it's a Latin word and it means to lead. That's why we have the lion as our logo. And everything we do is in the lens of building future leadership capacity.
Yeah, I think that's super, super smart because that would be one of the things as I was looking through kind of from the investor eye was just like, all right, man, you could be anything and everything, which means you're really not anything at the end of the day. So, we
100%. Couldn't agree
yeah,
more.
yeah. So, where should they go? How do they kind of dive in, learn more? Obviously, we'll put anything in the show notes, links wise, but where should people go?
Perfect. So a few things. One is, I think it's great to just educate yourself about higher education. Look at some of the organizations and things going on in the higher ed tech sector is good. From our particular perspective, you can just go to our website, which is ducere.education. So Ducere is Ducere, but you'll have it in your links.
Yep.
Education, the whole word education. You can see all the courses. You can read white papers. You can see our podcast channel, all the media that we have. So you can learn a lot about us there. And then from an investment specific perspective, it's just startengine.com, which probably a lot of your investor community would know. And so it's startengine.com/Ducere, Ducere. And then you can get all the investor information, all the disclosures, financials, etc. So that's where to go. And, I'm really happy to have conversations. Other people in our team are happy to have conversations, particularly in the context, not just of pure investment, but in the context of higher education, like understanding this industry more. What are the barriers? What are the opportunities? What's potentially a barrier preventing significant growth? Where are there opportunities for significant growth? Like just knowing a little bit more about, we've been living and breathing education forever. I started my first edtech company in my early 20s. So I founded two prior edtech companies, both of which ultimately got sold to public companies. So this is my kind of third big venture in
Yeah.
education. So, I'm not necessarily the expert, but I certainly feel like I've got enough years of experience and grey hair now to talk pretty competently about the sector and the sector in general. So anyone that wants to have a personal conversation about how big is this opportunity and where is the real competition and how do we strategically grow this into a global phenomenon, happy to have that conversation too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's do what we do for every podcast. We end with some questions that have nothing to do with education, crowdfunding, and none of this stuff. So, what are you currently watching on the old streaming channels? What's on the Netflix, Hulu's? What shows are you watching?
Oh, great question. So, one of the shows I'm watching is The New Look, which is really interesting about fashion designers. Not that I'm the
Okay.
hugest into fashion design, but it is set in World War II and it's about Coco Chanel and Balenciaga and Dior during the time of World War II and how they interacted with, the occupation of France and whether they kind of tried to collaborate or go against the
Yeah.
occupation. So that's really interesting. And the other one,
Sounds great.
you can probably tell from my two recommendations that I love history. The other one is Shogun. Shogun
Oh,
that just came out.
yeah, I just saw that.
Really, really
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
on that Japanese period in history and kind of transitioning from such an isolated island, secluded culture into starting to have a little bit of Western influence and what that means. But
Yeah.
also a fantastic show.
I think that one's on Hulu. I have it. I think I marked
Yeah,
it to watch. I think it's on Hulu.
yeah,
Yeah. So
it's
it
great.
looks
I
like
definitely recommend it.
yeah, it pops up as like you would like this 99% or 98%. You'll
Yeah,
definitely like
yeah.
this. So, and that's usually pretty good with what I watch. How about a podcast? Do you listen to anything? Obviously, you probably listen to this podcast all the time, but anything else that you might be listening to?
I do. I love listening to things on investment. I think that's really great, especially broad and different types of investment.
Mhm.
And the other thing is because I'm in education, the main one I listen to is the Ed Up podcast, which I've actually been asked to co-host a number of times. But that's also a great podcast on ed tech, education, higher ed, all the sorts of things we're talking about in this particular context.
Yeah,
I really like the Ed Up podcast as well.
cool. How about books? You read anything? You a book reader?
I do love books. I'm a big reader of books, and I used to love literature. I mean, I guess I still do love literature, but I don't seem to have the time for literature.
Much.
Pure fiction. I mean, so
Yeah.
I'm reading two books on the space economy right now. One's called Open for Business. It's by Robert Jacobson, which is kind of really ironic. He's got exactly the same last name as me. Never met, not family related. No idea who he is, but he's a
You're gonna do one of those
VC
DNA
and
tests, maybe.
yeah,
Maybe
I'm sure there's a third cousin connection somewhere.
right. Yeah.
But Space is Open for Business is a really fascinating book from a VC investment perspective on the whole
Mhm.
emergence of the private space sector. And especially because I'm doing this program now for a week, meeting all the big, people around
Yeah.
public and private sector space here in Washington, D.C. It was a good kind of introduction. So, yeah, I try to combine things that I'm interested in, not just purely for work when I'm talking about reading books, but kind of in my field of work, but also interesting.
Yeah. How about music? We'll finish up with music. Anything listening to right now? Any artists that you're
Music,
into?
probably, I'd say a little bit boring, honestly, in the sense that I love just old classics. I love listening to, 70s, 80s. I'm very eclectic in my music. I like a little bit of classical music, a little bit of jazz music, going to New Orleans and going to, jazz and blues bars, best thing ever. So, I just like anything that's quality music, honestly,
Sure.
is something that, I'm into.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Matt, like I said, I appreciate you taking time out of your day here. This was a great conversation. I encourage everybody go click on the links that's going to be in the show notes here. Definitely do some clicking around. There's a ton to dive into, and man, I wish you nothing but success. This is I think you got something here, man. This is something really cool.
Brilliant. I'm going to make your parents happy, Jeff, because I'm going to hit you up afterwards to try to convince you to do one of our MBAs, and then you can get that degree. So it's a win-win
I
all
mean,
around.
I'm not gonna lie, that is one thing where I'm always nervous. I mean, I'm in all financial meetings all the time, right? I'm sitting with VCs, I'm sitting with bankers, and I'm like, I have a high school degree, but I've done like 25 years of equity crowdfunding and finances, bridge loans. I mean, but I banged my head against the wall, doing things wrong for a little while. But yeah, my parents they'd be like, "Yay, he did it!" Yeah,
Awesome.
it was
Well,
different.
let's see if we can make it happen. But thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. This has been, really great and really fun.
Awesome, thanks, appreciate you.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Have a great day.